Monday, the 2nd of May. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. A proposal by Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked to impose Israeli law on areas under full Israeli control in Judea and Samaria within 1 year has caused an outrage. IBA's Margot Dudkevich reports.
At a recent conference in Jerusalem, Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked announced that a joint committee with the Defense Ministry was established to ensure that any law passed in the Knesset will apply to those living in Judea and Samaria. Jewish Home Leader and Education Minister Naftali Bennett said he supports the initiative that will also apply to Jews and Arabs living in the area. Bennett said he doubts the Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit will hamper the move. Former Justice Minister Tzipi Livni said the proposed annexation bill will lead to a binational state and the collapse of a two-state solution. The move will create two legal systems in one state and allow 2.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank the right to vote for the Knesset. Reacting to the controversy, Knesset member Yaakov Peri of the Yesh Atid party told Israel Radio that plans to annex Area C, land stipulated in the Oslo Accords as West Bank areas under full Israeli control, is a move aimed at annexing part of the West Bank through the back door. Perry said his party will not approve or support such a move that will lead to an unnecessary international uproar. Meretz chairwoman Zahava Galon accused Shaked of combining annexation and apartheid, a move she says will create racial discrimination. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Just days before the mayoral elections in London, British Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn may be facing a possible leadership challenge and frontbench resignations over his party's ongoing anti-Semitism scandal. Today, another Labour official, City Councillor Ilyas Aziz, was suspended for anti-Semitic remarks. IBA's Elon Aslin-Levy has that story.
Controversy has gripped the British press following claims last week by former London Mayor Ken Livingstone that Hitler supported Zionism before he went mad. On the BBC, MP Diane Abbott, a close Corbyn ally, dismissed allegations that the party has an anti-Semitism problem.
And you know, it's something of a smear against ordinary party members.
Absolutely not.
No, it is.
Absolutely
it
not.
Is. It is
that's
a smear
I'm sorry,
to say
ridiculous.
that the Labour Party has a problem with anti-Semitism.
Israel's new ambassador to the United Kingdom, Mark Regev, appeared on the same show in his first televised appearance as ambassador. Hinting at Corbyn's characterization of Hamas and Hezbollah as friends, Regev called for Labour to tackle its alleged anti-Semitism problem more vigorously.
Some progressive politicians have embraced Hamas. Now, I'd ask the following question. If you're progressive, you're embracing an organization which is homophobic, which is misogynistic, which is openly anti-Semitic, what's progressive about that? And if you'll allow me, I think there has to be an an unequivocal message from leadership saying that there is no solidarity with anti-Semites.
Regev further explained why he views the demonization of Israel as a modern incarnation of anti-Semitism.
But there's a difference between legitimate criticism and between hate speech. And just as there's no justification for hating blacks or hating homosexuals, there's no justification for hating Jews. And that is the red line that simply can't be crossed.
Do you think it has been crossed in the last few weeks?
Definitely. You know, if historically anti-Semites targeted individual Jews, that they were evil, that they were behind the scenes, that they were manipulators, all the typical anti-Semitic stereotypes, if you listen very carefully, today modern anti-Semites target the collective Jew, the Jewish state.
Indeed, the British public appears inclined to agree. In a new poll by polling agency YouGov, 53% of respondents concurred that hating Israel and questioning its right to exist are anti-Semitic, while only 21% disagreed. In a sharply worded letter, Israeli Labour leader Isaac Herzog invited Corbyn to visit Israel and the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. Corbyn's office has signalled his willingness to visit, but whether he could ever lead a delegation as party leader will depend on his surviving this continuing crisis.
For the first time in court, Reinhold Hanning, a 94-year-old former SS guard, personally admitted that he was ashamed of knowingly allowing injustice to happen and doing nothing to prevent it. Hanning is on trial for being an accessory to the murder of 170,000 Jews imprisoned at the Auschwitz concentration camp while working there as a guard from January 1943 to June of 1944. Reading from a written statement during the 12th court hearing at the West German city of Detmold, Henning said he deeply regretted having been part of what he described as a criminal organization that is responsible for the death of many innocent people. He apologized for the misery and torment caused to the victims and their relatives. Some 40 Holocaust survivors and joint plaintiffs from Hungary, Israel, Canada, Britain, the U.S., and Germany have testified before the court, which is expected to deliver its verdict later this month on the 27th of May. Ahead of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is marked this week, the IDF General Staff met this morning at the Yad Vashem Memorial Museum. Speaking at the event, IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot said that Holocaust survivors who managed to immigrate to Israel knew in their hearts that the Army was committed to their security and will forever defend the country. Eisenkot stressed the IDF's commitment to continue safeguarding the Jewish state is the only way to implement the dream of those survivors who, instead of giving in to the horrors, chose life instead. Joining us now in the studio is renowned Holocaust scholar Dr. Ephraim Zuroff, the Israel director of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. Let's begin with the ongoing anti-Semitism scandal in Britain's Labour Party. What do you make of former London Mayor Ken Livingstone's remarks that Hitler supported the establishment of a Jewish state?
First of all, naturally, that is absolutely absurd. Hitler never supported the idea of creation of a Jewish state. On the contrary, I think he believed that such a state would only serve as a source of power, a base of power for the renaissance of Judaism. And the only thing that could possibly, ostensibly, seem to support such a thing would be that the Havara agreement, the transfer agreement signed between Chaim Arlozorov and German officials to allow the transfer of, in other words, the emigration of German Jews to Palestine, and which enabled them to be able to utilize some of their money, which was used to buy German goods which were sent to Palestine. This is ostensibly what he was referring to. But this is all based, his assertion is based on the work of a Marxist, American Marxist historian by the name of Lenny Brenner, who is, whose views are not accepted by any reputable historian.
Dr. Zuroff, is this an attempt by Livingstone to delegitimize Zionism?
Of course. It's another way of attacking Zionism. In other words, in Western Europe today, anti-Semitism has basically morphed into anti-Zionism. Actually, in the wake of the Holocaust, it's no longer acceptable to attack Jews for having a different religion, having different traditions, etc. So basically, anti-Semitism has morphed into the attacks on the Jewish state.
Dr. Zuroff, what sort of outcome can we expect from the British Labour Party's inside inquiry on how to tackle anti-Semitism and racism?
Well, that'll depend, first of all, on the determination or lack of determination of the leadership of the Labour Party to take the necessary steps to expel the anti-Semites. And I'm not sure that they actually have that determination, to be perfectly honest.
We can expect nothing of the inquiry?
It's too early to tell. It depends who are the people who carry out the inquiry, but more than anything else is a question, this is a challenge, a leadership challenge to Jeremy Corbyn and the leaders of the Labour Party.
Your center annually releases a report on the worldwide investigation and prosecution of Nazi war criminals. This year, there's a most wanted list of 10 people. Where do things stand?
Okay, first of all, the good news is that in Germany, a change in German prosecution policy will lead to quite a few trials. As a matter of fact, in 2016, there were already 4 trials slated, when in the course of the last 15 years, only a total of 7 Germans were convicted, and in no year more than 2. So the change, actually this took place in the wake of the Demjanjuk conviction, where basically any person who served in a death camp, which is one of the 6 camps in Poland which had industrialized mass murder, or in the Einsatzgruppen, the special mobile killing units that murdered 1.5 million Jews in the Soviet Union, can be automatically convicted of accessory to murder based on service alone, and that service can be proven by documents. So in other words, we're not dependent on witnesses. In the past, a German prosecutor who wanted to bring a suspected Nazi to trial had to prove that that suspect had committed a specific crime against a specific victim and had done so out of racial hate. So that's incredibly hard to do, and the results speak for themselves.
Are we witnessing a change of attitude? We just reported about the trial of the Nazi war criminal in Germany. Are we witnessing a change of attitude in Europe to bring Nazi war criminals to justice, and why now?
First of all, such a change is not in Europe as a whole, that's for sure. The only place where this change has taken place is in Germany, and part of the reason is that now the problem is much more manageable. 98 to 99% of the people who committed the crimes of the Nazis are no longer alive. And to be quite frank, in other words, if the Central Office for the Clarification of Nazi War Crimes wanted to continue working, they had to find a way to be able to bring people to justice. And this change is really in a certain sense, very dramatic. Because in the past, someone like Hennig could never have been brought to justice. Or Tremel, who unfortunately passed away before his trial, or Zafka, or Kissner, the radio operator. At Auschwitz. In other words, these people would never have been prosecuted. But only now, since the change has been made and anyone who served in the camp can be prosecuted on service of law and successfully prosecuted and convicted, as was Ivan Demjanjuk in 2011, as was Oscar Groening just this past July. Now, the Groening case was particularly important because, as far as we knew, he was never physically involved in the process of extermination. He was the bookkeeper of Auschwitz. He was the guy who stole all the currency brought by the deportees, processed the money, and sent it back to Berlin for use by the Third Reich. But he too was convicted based on the same new thinking, new strategy.
One last quick question. Do you agree that there's a growing sense of anti-Semitism worldwide?
Listen, there's no question that there's been a rise in anti-Semitism, but we have to explain that it's not the same everywhere. In other words, in Western Europe, we're talking about the Muslim immigrant communities, the extreme right and the extreme left, and it has basically morphed into anti-Zionism. In Eastern Europe, it's a completely different situation. The left has been completely delegitimized with the fall of communism. There are no, I'm excluding Russia for a minute, there are no Muslim immigrant communities of any consequence, so all that's left is the extreme right. And the anti-Semitism there is, you could draw a direct line from the 30s to today, and ironically, in many of these countries, they actually love Israel, but hate Jews.
Dr. Ephraim Zuroff, thank you so much for being our guest this evening.
You're welcome.
In other news, a 24-year-old Hamas operative was indicted at the Beersheba District Court on 18 different charges stemming back from 2007 when he first joined the terror organization. Medhat Abu Snena is accused of planting explosives and firing rockets at Israeli troops deployed along the Gaza border and participating in weapons training with Hamas. He is also charged for jointly owning a kilometer-long smuggling tunnel used to transfer weapons from Sinai to Rafah in southern Gaza and receiving monthly payments to the tune of some $2,000. Abu Snena was arrested by Shin Bet security agents near the Gaza border. There were no details concerning the date of his capture. Two Israeli medical students, cousins from the Bedouin city of Rahat, who were kidnapped last week near the Syrian border, are on their way home today after Turkish police were able to secure their release. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan has more.
The residents of the Bedouin city of Rahat are breathing a sigh of relief today. Just a few days ago, information reached them that two young men, Saleh and Sahir, from Rahat, who were studying medicine in Armenia, were kidnapped. The kidnappers released this footage of the young men. He says that they went to the Syrian-Armenian frontier to pick up a shipment of gold when they were betrayed and captured. According to the families, the video was filmed when the two young medical students were held, tied up in the house of the kidnappers. According to the Foreign Ministry, the two cousins left their studies last Thursday and were enticed across the border to buy gold, and then they were nabbed. Family members said they received a request to pay a ransom of over $100,000, and if they didn't pay it, they threatened to turn them over to the Islamic State in Syria. The family said they refused to pay, and the Turkish police were able to track down the location that they were being held and freed them. They were taken to a police station in Mirsim, Turkey, and family members flew to Turkey to bring them home. The Foreign Ministry immediately got involved in the case, and despite the rough diplomatic tensions with Turkey, this case is evidence that the relations could be on the mend. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Turning to the United States, where FBI agents succeeded in foiling a terror attack on a synagogue in South Florida. The suspect, who reportedly converted to Islam, planned to throw an explosive device at the Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center during Friday evening prayers marking the end of Passover Agents posing as fellow terrorists caught the suspect before he perpetrated the attack. He is due to appear before a federal court in the coming days. The center released a statement saying the Jewish leadership and congregation were briefed by law enforcement officials concerning the situation and were assured that the school and synagogue were never at risk. In other news, Jerusalemites this morning looked to the skies to find an American highliner literally walk a narrow line between ancient towers. Heather Larson, one of the world's highest-ranked female slackline walkers, braved the heights as she strutted across a 35-meter span on the inside of the Tower of David Museum. Wearing a harness attached to the line, Larson inched away between the tower built by King Herod 2,000 years ago to another tower built by Suleiman the Magnificent 500 years ago. Larson's stunt was part of a promotional film for Koala Gear, an Israeli-Swiss backpack company. It was her first visit to Israel, and she certainly saw it from a unique angle.
This is really incredible, just the site itself, but yeah, learning about these places growing up and being able to come and visit and then actually be able to perform my craft right here is a very incredible experience.
In local money matters, shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. And temperatures are expected to rise tomorrow with hazy conditions predicted in the afternoon and the chance of sandstorms in the south of the country. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. That's all for this newscast. Ari O'Sullivan will be here tomorrow, same time, same channel. Make sure to join him. I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.